Hi, I'm Matt and welcome to the Black Box Mind channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about jump cuts, J cuts and L cuts, what they are, what they look like and why you might want to use them. And to make things super clear, I'll give you clear examples of making them and using them in different contexts as well. You lucky thing. Don't forget to like, comment and sub if you find this video helpful. First, let's talk about jump cuts, a staple of any great YouTube channel. When you make a straight cut between two clips, typically with the same framing and subject, this creates what we call a jump cut. The video will literally jump from one clip to another. So let's take a look at this cut in a video editing program to get a better understanding of what it is I'm talking about. Here we are in my editing software of choice, Final Cut Pro 10. I've lined up a clip on the timeline and I'm going to make some jump cuts. Here is the original clip before we start cutting. This is really important. Now let's add in some jump cuts as well as tweaking the zoom a little to highlight the importance of this information. Here I'm cutting at the points where I want and I'm increasing the zoom by 5% for each subsequent clip. This creates jump cuts between each clip on the timeline, an abrupt switch from one clip to the next. Let's see this in action. This is really important. Can you see what I mean about the video jumping from one clip to another? Let's take a look again. This is really important. This jump cut can be great for a number of different situations, like adding tension or creating energy in a sequence. Quite often in YouTube, if done correctly, it can be a way of signaling important information, as I've done in the simple example. For more information on signaling important information in your videos, why not check out my video on the subject. Sometimes there are occasions when you didn't intend to make a cut in a video. For example, if you made a mistake halfway through a sentence. This is where we can talk about the J and L cuts. It's when either the video or audio leads into the next shot before the other one follows. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here are two cut examples. One is a J cut and one is an L cut. Can you guess which is which? That's it. This is the J cut looking like a J and this is the L cut obviously looking like an L. With the J cut, the audio changes first, closely followed by the video, and the L cut is the opposite. The video changes first, followed by the audio. Let's start by looking at using these kind of cuts in a YouTube video. Typically with YouTube videos, the amount of cuts in any given video is quite high. One disadvantage of this is the video can quickly feel choppy and kind of hacked together. This can be really distracting for people watching, so it's worth trying to smooth things out a bit. In this context, the J and L cuts are a great tool. At some point during your recording, you're going to be making mistakes and cocking up halfway through sentences. Rather than retaking a whole section again, we pick up where we messed up. This is a kind of we'll fix it in post attitude, which we can kind of get away with on YouTube. Here's an example of a section of one of my videos that I messed up, and I'll cut out the mistake using a J cut. So we're back again in Final Cut Pro 10 and I've got a clip lined up on the timeline down below. This is actually a clip from my video on Works for X. If you want to go check it out, I've linked to it up above. So let's watch through this section of the video and see what we're going to be cutting out. Packs a massive punch when it comes to saving disk space. So the objectives of this video are to show you the ins and outs of. So to start with, let's create a jump cut and then from there we'll be able to easily make that into a J cut. The punch when it comes to saving disk space. So that's the end of the first sentence and I'll make my cut there and then I'll go to the beginning of the next. So the objectives of this video, just there, make another cut, get rid of all the crap in between, and now we have our simple jump cut. Let's watch that quickly. When it comes to saving disk space. So the objectives of this video are to show. Okay, so that's simple enough, but if we want to make that jump cut into a J cut, then what we can do is in Final Cut Pro 10, we can hit T on the keyboard. That brings up the trim tool, and we can select the joint in between the two clips here, this edit in between the two clips. And if we drag it to the left, we make an L cut, obviously, because we've got that L shape with the footage that we talked about before. If we drag it to the right, then we have a J cut. You don't want to drag it too far over and have that J cut go on for too long, just like the first word or maybe word and a half or something like that. So there we have a very simple and quick J cut. Let's see how that looks in between the two clips. When it comes to saving disk space. So the objectives of this video are to show you the ins and when it comes to saving disk space. So the objectives of this video are... Okay, so that's how you quite simply put together a quick J-cut. Now let's take a look at the L-cut. This, I would argue, is used less but still helpful in certain situations. I like to use it occasionally to switch from B-roll with music to me talking to camera. Let's take a look at the L-cut in the editing program and how quickly we can put it together. So here on the timeline, I've got a clip of me talking to camera coming to the end of a section of a video, which will lead into some B-roll here. Typically with the B-roll, I put on kind of titles to make a transition between different sections of a video. You can see I've also included some music here just so we can add an extra level of polish at the end. So let's watch the unedited cut projects and whether it's something that you want to add to that workflow. Okay, so in order to start doing the L-cut, we again using the trim tool, we go back between the transition between the two clips here, and we drag, instead of dragging to the right for a J-cut, we'll drag to the left this time for an L-cut. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, just a small amount. It's kind of, each situation is a little bit different, and the length of each of those kind of cuts, those L and J cuts, is also a little bit different. But the more you do it, the more you'll get a feel for it. Let's just watch that back. There is something that you want to add to that workflow. Okay, that to me looks like it's in a pretty good place. Something that you want to add to that workflow. Now what we'll do is, just with the music, we'll just tweak these things just to line up a little bit better. So with that drop in the music that you heard, I'm going to align that with the end of me talking and then fade out the other track as well, just to transition between the two. And let's watch this back. And whether it's something that you want to add to that workflow. And there you have one simple example of an L-cut. Another very good situation to use these cuts is when editing together dialogue for a scene, for like a non-fiction video that you're making. Let's take a look at it in action. Here is a scene from The Last Samurai where Nathan Algren goes to meet Colonel Bagley, Mr. Omura and his associates for dinner. I've put a timeline down below. I kind of hacked together a timeline to show the cuts in audio and video. When we play it back, see if you can spot the L cuts and J cuts used in the edit of the scene. We won't watch the whole thing, but just enough for you to get an idea of what I'm talking about.
How many other genuine heroes you got lined up? Whiskey.
So, who will we be training your boys to fight?
His name is Katsumoto Moritsugu. He was once the emperor's teacher. He is samurai.
Samurai.
The word you might use is warrior.
Mr. Omura is familiar with our experiences dealing with renegades.
Is he?
He's even read your book. Captain Algren's study of the tribes was a crucial factor in our defeat of the Cheyenne.
Okay, did you spot the J and L cuts in the scene? Let's pick out a couple and take a closer look. So if we take a look at my kind of hacked together timeline here, you can see that there's a lot of J cuts, L cuts, straight cuts, a wide mix for what I think are various different reasons. So we'll start off here.
So, who will we be training you?
So that's a very clear J cut there we've got. So we've got Billy Connolly's character saying,
So, who will we be training?
Saying so before he leads into the video there.
So, who will we be...
To kind of transition from this wide shot into the close-up of Billy Connolly's character.
So, who will we be training your boys to fight?
His name is Katsumoto.
Very small. Debatable whether you could even call this cut here an L cut, but we see Mr. Omura very briefly before he starts talking there.
His name is Katsumoto Moritsugu.
Then we have another L cut here. So,
Is Katsumoto Moritsugu. He was once the emperor's teacher. He is samurai.
Samurai.
So that's a very clear L cut there. We cut to Billy Connolly
Samurai.
way before we hear his audio.
Samurai.
Yeah.
The word you might...
And then a couple of straight cuts as well into the mix. So
Samurai.
L cut,
Samurai.
straight
The
cut,
word you might use is warrior.
straight
Mr.
cut.
Omura is familiar with our
And then another
experiences
straight
dealing
cut
with
back to
renegades.
Nathan.
Is he?
There.
He's even...
So here with this section I have the impression like, you want this bit of dialogue to flow, but then create a bit of tension between the Colonel and Nathan with the straight cuts and Mr. Omura.
So, who will we be training your boys to fight?
His name is Katsumoto Moritsugu.
Delivering
He
information.
was once the emperor's teacher.
Okay, it's important we pay
He's
attention.
samurai.
And then a bit of tension.
Samurai.
The word you might use is warrior.
Mr. Omura is familiar with our experiences dealing with renegades.
Straight to Nathan, straight to back to
He's even
Colonel.
read your book.
Adds a little bit of tension there. So we can see that because this dynamic between Nathan and the Colonel are also, is quite a bit of a tense bit of dialogue between the two, but within this context of a nice meal, sat around the table at a very elegant place. So, you know, the last thing people are expecting in a situation like that is kind of conflict, and yet there is this kind of tension, underlying tension between the two characters. So now just kind of run through those. Let's kind of watch just very quickly back through that section again, just so you have a more of a feel, and I'll call out the cuts as we go. We've got
So,
J cut,
who will we be training your boys to fight?
small L cut,
His name is Katsumoto Moritsu. He was once the emperor's teacher. He is samurai.
L cut,
Samurai.
straight
The
cut,
word you might use is
so a straight
warrior.
cut here,
Mr. Omura is familiar with our experiences dealing with renegades.
and straight cut, straight cut.
He's even read your book.
And there you go, using J and L cuts in a movie scene. So that is a more in-depth look at the different types of cuts that can be used when you're video editing, and we also saw them in action in different contexts. Post up your questions in the comments down below, and don't forget to like the video and sub to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.